The Christian in Complete Armour by William Gurnall. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 14b. Having your loins. Chapter 5, a direction or two for the girding of truth close to us in the profession of it. Question. But how may a soul get to be thus girded with truth in the profession of it? Answer. First labor to get a heart inflamed with a sincere love to the truth. This is only able to match the enemies of truth. The worst they can do is bonds of death, and love is stronger than death. It kills the very heart of death itself. It makes all easy. Commandments are not grievous to love, nor doth it complain of sufferings. With what a light heart did Jacob, for the love of Rachel, endured the heat of the day and the cold of the night. It is venturous Jonathan threw a kingdom at his heels and conflicted with the anger of an enraged father for David's sake. Love never thinks itself a loser, so long as it keeps its beloved. Yea, it is ambitious of any hazardous enterprise, whereby it may sacrifice itself in the service of its beloved, as we see in David, who put his life in the hands for Michal. How much more when our love is pitched upon so transcendent an object as Christ and his truth. Alas, they are but faint spirits which are breathed from a creature, weak beams that are not shot from such sorry beauties. If these lay their lovers under such a law that they cannot but obey, though with the greatest peril and hazard, what constraineth them must a soul ravished with the love of Christ be under? This has made the saints leap out of their estates, relations, yea, out of their bodies with joy, counting it not their loss to part with them, but to keep them with the least prejudiced to the truth. Revelations chapter 12, verse 11. It is said there, they love not their lives unto the death. Mark, not to the loss of some of the comforts of their lives, but to death. Life itself they counted an enemy, when it would part them and truth. As a man doth not love his arm or leg, when it hazards the rest, but bids it cut off. Cannot we live, say these noble spirits, but by the clouding of truth, and calling our love to it and Christ into question? Welcome then the worst of deaths. This kept up David's courage when his life was laid for. Psalms chapter 119, verse 95. Though wicked have waited for me to destroy, but I will consider thy testimonies. A carnal heart would have considered his estate, wife and children, or at least his life now in danger. But David's heart was on a better subject. He considered the testimonies of God, and so much sweetness pours in upon his soul while he is rolling them in his meditation that he cannot hold. Oh, how I love thy law, verse 97. This made him set light by all the troubles he met with for his cleaving to the truth. It is a great mystery to the world that men with an opinion, as they call it, should run such desperate hazard. Therefore Paul was thought by his judge to be out of his wit, and that question which Pilate asked Christ seems rather to be slightingly than seriously spoken. John chapter 18, our Savior had told him, verse 37, that the end why he was born and came into the world was that he should bear witness to the truth. Then Pilate, verse 38, asked Christ, what is truth? And presently flings away, as if he had said, is this now a time to think of truth, when thy life is in danger? What is truth, that thou shouldest venture so much for it? But a gracious soul may better ask in a holy scorn, what are riches and honors? What the fading pleasures of this cheating world? Yea, what is life itself, that any or all of these should be set in opposition to truth. O sirs, look what has your love. That will command purse, credit, life, and all. Every man goes where his love carries him. If the world has your love, on it you will spend your lives. If truth has your hearts, you will catch the blow that is made at it in your own breast, rather than let it fall on its. Only be careful that your love to truth be sincere, or else it will leave you at the prison door and make you part with truth when you should most appear for it. Three sorts of pretenders to truth. Their love is not like to endure the fierce trial. First, such an embrace truth for carnal advantage. Sometimes truth pays well for her board in the world's own coin, and so long everyone will invite her to his house. These do not love truth, but the jewel at her ear. Many were observed in Henry VIII's time to be very zealous against the abbots that loved their lands more than they hated their idolatry. Truth finds few that love her gratis, and those few only will suffer with truth and for it as for the other, when the worldly dowry that truth brought be once spent. You will find they are weary of their match. This kitchen fire burns no longer than such gross fuel of profit, credit, and the like does feed it. If you cannot love naked truth, you will not have courage to go naked for truth. If you cannot love disgraced truth, you will not endure to be disgraced for truth. And what usage truth finds that her followers must expect. Secondly, such who commend truth and cry it up highly, but if you mark them, they do but compliment with it. All this while they keep at a distance and do not suffer truth to come within them, so as to give law unto them. Like one that entertains a suitor, speaks well of him, holds discourse with him, but will not hear of marrying him. Bucholcerus would often say, many kiss Christ, but few love him. True love to Christ is conjunctural. When a soul delivers up itself from an inward liking it hath to Christ, as to her husband, to be ruled by his Spirit, and ordered by his word of truth, here is a soul, loves Christ and his truth, but where truth has no command, and bears no rule, there dwells no love to truth in that heart. She that is not obedient cannot be a loving wife, because love would constrain her to be so. And so would love in the soul enforce obediency to the truth it loves. Nay, he that doth not obey truth is so far from loving it that he is afraid of truth, and he that is slavishly afraid of truth will sooner prove a persecutor of truth than a sufferer for truth. So true is that of Hierome, whom we fear we hate, whom we hate we wish they were destroyed. Saul feared David, and that made him industriously seek his ruin. Herod feared John, and that cost him his life. Slavish fear makes the naughty heart imprison truth in his conscience, because if that had its liberty and authority in the soul, it would imprison, yea, execute every lust that now rules the roost. And he that imprisoned truth in his own bosom would hardly lie in prison himself as a witness for truth. Thirdly, such as hath no zeal against truth's enemies. Love goes ever armed with zeal. This is her dagger. She draws again all the opposers of truth. He that is not zealous does not love. Now, right zeal acts, like fire, to its utmost power, yet ever keeping its place and sphere. If it be confined to the breast of a private Christian, whence it may not flame forth in punishing truth's enemies, then it burns inwardly the more for being pent up in praise, like a fire in his bones upon the Christian's own spirits, consuming them, yea, eating him up for grief to see truth trod under foot of error or profaneness, and he not able to help it up. It is no joy to a zealous lover to outlive his beloved. Such there have been, who could have chose rather to have leaped into their friend's grave and laid down with them in the dust, that here pass a disconsolate life without them. Let us go and die with him, saith Thomas, when Christ told them Lazarus was dead. For I am sure zealous lovers of truth count it as melancholy, living in evil times, when that is fallen in the streets. The news of the ark's taking frightened good Eli's soul out of his body, and this may terribly be thought to have given life to Elijah's wish, yea, solemn prayer for death, 1 Kings 19:4. It is enough. Take away my life. The holy man saw how things went among the great ones of those wicked times, idolaters that were courted, and the faithful servants of God carted, as I may say, yea, killed. And now this zealous prophet thinks it is a good time to leave the world in, rather than live in torment any longer, to see the name, truth, and servants of God trampled on by those who should have shown most kindness to them. But if zeal hath any power put into her hands, wherein she may vindicate truth's cause, as when she is exalted into the magistrate's seat, then truth's enemies shall know and feel that she bears not the sword in vain. The zealous magistrate will have as an arm to relieve and defend truth. The Israelites so a hand to smite blasphemy, error, and profaneness. The Egyptian, when any of them assaults her. O how Moses laid about him that meek man who stood so mute in his own cause. Numbers chapter 12, when the people had committed idolatry. His heart was so fired within him that as well as he loved them, he could neither open his mouth in prayer for them to God, nor his ear to receive any petition from them, till he had given vent to his zeal and an act of justice upon the offenders. Now such and such only are the persons that are likely, when called to suffer for the truth, who will not let it suffer if they can help it. But as for natural, Galileo-like spirits that can see truth and error scuffling, and not do their utmost to relieve truth, by interposing their power and authority, if a magistrate, by preaching the one up and the other down, if a minister, and by a free testimony to, fervent prayer for, and affectionate sympathizing with truth, as it fares ill or well, if a private Christian. I say, as for such, who stand in this case as some spectators about two wrestlers, not caring much who hath the fall, these are not the men that can be expected to expose themselves to much suffering for truth. That magistrate who hath not zeal enough to stop the mouths of truth's enemies, when we may, will he open his mouth in a free profession of it when death and danger face him? That minister who hath neither love nor courage enough to apologize for truth in the pulpit, can it be thought he would stand to her defense at a stake? In a word, that private Christian whose heart is not wounded through truth's sides, so as to sympathize with it, will he interpose himself betwixt truth and the blow that bloody persecutors make at it, and choose to receive it into his own body through death, rather than it should light on truth? If the fire of love within be out, or so little that it will not merit the man into sorrow for the wrongs done to truth by men of corrupt minds, where will the flame be found that should enable him to burn to ashes under the hand of bloody men, who will never endure the fire in his body, that hath no more care to keep that sacred fire burning in his soul? If he cannot shed tears, much less will he bleed for truth. Question. If any now should ask how they may get their hearts inflamed with this heavenly fire of love to truth, I answer first. Answer 1. Labor for inward conformity of thy heart to truth. Likeness is the ground of love. A carnal heart cannot like truth, because it is not like to truth. Such a one may love truth as he did Alexander, the king, not the person that was king, truth in its honor and dignity, when it can prefer him, but not naked truth itself. How is it possible an earthly soul should love truth that is heavenly? An unholy heart, truth that is pure? Oh, it is sad indeed when men's tenets and principles in their understandings do clash and fight with the principles of their hearts and affections. When men have orthodox judgment and heterodox hearts, there must needs be little love to truth, because the judgment and will are so unequally yoked, truth in the conscience reproving and threatening lust in the heart, and that again controlling truth in the conscience. Thus, like a scolding couple, that they may a while dwell together, but taking no content in one another, the wretch is easily persuaded to give truth a bill of divorce at last and send her away, as Ahasuerus did Vashti, that he may espouse other principles which will suit better with his corrupt heart and not cross him in the way which he is in. This I am persuaded hath parted many and truth in these licious days. They could not sin peaceably while they kept their judgment sound. Truth ever and anon would be chiding them, and therefore to match their judgments with their hearts, they have taken up principles suitable to their lusts. But soul, if truth had such a power upon thee, to transform thee by the renewing of thy mind into its own likeness, that as the scion turns the stock into its own nature, so truth has assimilated thee, and made thee bear fruit like itself. Thou art the person that will never part with truth. Before thou canst do this, thou must part with that new nature which by it the Spirit of God hath begotten in thee. There is now such a near union betwixt thee and truth, or rather thee and Christ, as can never be broke. We see what a mighty power there goes along with God's ordinancy of marriage, that two persons who possibly a month before never knew one another, yet their affections once knit by love, and their persons made one by marriage, they can now leave friends and parents for to enjoy each other. Such a mighty power and much greater goes along with this mystical marriage between the soul and Christ, the soul and truth, that the same person who, before conversion, would not have ventured the loss of a penny for Christ or his truth, yet now, knit to Christ and his truth, by a secret work of the Spirit, now forming him into the likeness thereof, he can bid adieu to the world, life, and all for Jesus. As that martyr told him that asked whether he did not love his wife and children, and was not loath to part with them. Yes, saith he, I love them so dearly, that I would not part with any of them for all the Duke of Brunswick is worth, whose subject he was, but for Christ's sake and his truth, farewell to them all. Secondly, labor to get thy heart more and more enfired with the love of God, and this will work in thee a dear love to his truth. Love obscures what is precious and dear to its beloved, and loves it for his sake. David's love to Jonathan made him inquire for some of his race, that he might show kindness to for his sake. Love to God will make the soul inquisitive to find out what is near and dear to God, that by showing kindness to it he may express his love to him. Now upon a little search, we shall find that the great God sets a very high price upon the head of truth. Psalms 138, verse 2. Thou hast magnified thy word above all thy name. That is God's name by which he is known. Every creature hath God's name upon it. By it God is known, even to the least pile of grass. But to his word and truth therein written, he hath given preeminence above all other things that bear his name. Take a few considerations whereby we may a little conceive the high value God sets up truth. First, God, when he vouchsafed his word and truth to a people, he makes account, he gives them one of the greatest mercies that they can receive or he give. He calls them the greatest things of his law. Hosea chapter 8, verse 12. A people that enjoy his truth, they are by God's own judgment lifted up to heaven. Whatever people have at God's hands without this bears no more comparison with it than Hagar's loaf of bread and bottle, with which Ishmael's portion would with Isaac's inheritance. God that knows how to prize and rate his own gifts saith of his word which he sheweth to Jacob, and testimonies that he gives to Israel, that he hath not dealt so with any nation. Psalms 147, verse 20. That is, not so richly and graciously. Secondly, consider God's especial care to preserve his truth. Whatever is lost, God looks to his truth. In shipwrecks at sea and scarcities at land, when men can save but little, they use to choose not lumber and things of no worth, but what they esteem most precious. In all the great revolutions, changes, and overturnings of kingdoms and churches also, God hath still preserved his truth. Thousands of saints' lives have been taken away, but that which the devil spites more than all the saints, yea, which alone he spites them for, that is the truth, this lives and shall to trumpet over his malice. And sure, if truth were not very dear to God, he would not be at this cost to keep it with the blood of his saints. Yea, which is more, the blood of his Son, whose errand into the world was by life and death to bear witness to the truth. John chapter 18, verse 37. In a word, in that great and dismal conflagration of heaven and earth, when the elements shall melt for heat, and the world come to its fatal period, then truth shall not suffer the least loss, but the word of the Lord endureth forever. 1 Peter 1:25. Thirdly, consider the severity of God to the enemies of truth. A dreadful curse is denounced against those that shall take away from it, or add the least to it, that in base or clip this heavenly coin. Revelations 22, verse 18. All these speak at what a high rate God values truth. And no wonder, if we consider what truth is, that truth which shines forth from the written word. It is the extract of God's thoughts and counsels, which from the everlasting he took up and had in his heart to effect. Nothing comes to pass but as an accomplishment of this, his word. It is the most full and perfect representation that God himself could give of his own being and nature to the sons of men, that by it we might know him and love him. Great princes used to send their pictures by their ambassadors to those whom they woo for marriage. God is such an infinite perfection that no hand can draw him forth to life but his own. And this he hath done exactly in his word, from which all his saints have come to be enamored with him. As we deal with truth, so we do with God himself. He that despises that despiseth him. He that abandons the truth of God renounces the God of truth. Though man cannot come to pull God out of his throne and deprive him of his Godhead, yet they come as near this as it is possible when they let out their wrath against the truth. In this they do, as it were, execute God in effigy. There is reason we see why God should so highly prize his truth, and that we that love him should cleave to it. Thirdly, be much in the meditation of the transcendent excellency of truth. The eye affects the heart. This is the window at which love enters. Neither any that had a spiritual eye to see truth in her native beauty, but had a heart to love her. This was the way that David's heart was ravished with the love of the word of truth. Psalms 119:96. Oh, how I love thy law. It is the meditation all the day, is my meditation. While his thoughts were on it, his love was drawn to it. David found a great difference betwixt meditating on the truths of God's words and other excellencies which the world cries up so highly. When he goes to entertain himself with the thoughts of some perfection of the creature, he finds it but a dry subject compared with this, so soon tumbles over the book of the world's excellencies, and can find no notion that deserves any long stay upon it. I have seen, saith he, an end of all perfections. He is at the world's end presently, and in a few thoughts can see to the bottom of all the world's glory. But when he takes up the truths of God into his thoughts, now he meets with work enough for his admiration and sweet meditation. Thy commandments are exceeding broad. Great ships cannot sail in narrow rivers and shallow waters. Neither can minds truly great with the knowledge of God in heaven find room enough in the creature to turn and expiate themselves in. A gracious soul is soon aground and at a stand when upon these flats, but let it launch out into the meditation of God, His Word, the mysterious truth of the gospel, and he finds a place of broad waters, sea room enough to lose himself in. I might here show you the excellency of divine truths from many heads, as from the source and spring head, whence they flow, the God of truth. From their opposite, that mishappened monster, etc., in error. That I shall only direct your meditation to a few enamoring properties which you shall find in these truths. You may meet a heap of them together in Psalms 19, verse 7, and so on. Truth, it is pure. This made David love it, Psalms 119, 140. It is not only pure, but makes the soul pure and holy that embraces it. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. John chapter 17, verse 17. It is the pure water that God washes foul souls clean with. Ezekiel chapter 46, verse 25. I will sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean. From all your filthiness will I cleanse you. Foul puddle water will as soon make the face as error made the soul clean. Truth is sure and hath a firm bottom. Psalms 19, verse 7. We may lay the whole weight of our souls upon it, and yet not crack under it. Cleave to truth, and it will stick to thee. It will go with thee to prison, banishment, yea, stake itself, and bear thy charges wherever thou goest upon her errand. Now one thing, saith Joshua, hath failed of all the good things which the Lord your God spake concerning you. All are come to pass upon you. Not one thing hath failed thereof. Joshua chapter 23, verse 14. Whatever you find there promised counteth money in your purse. 80 years, saith Polycarp, I have served God and found him a good master. But when men think of forsaking the truth to provide well for themselves, they are sure to meet with disappointments. Many have been flattered from truth with goodly promises, and then served no better than Judas was by the Jews after he had betrayed his master into their bloody hands. See thou to that. Though persecutors love the treason, yet they hate the traitor. Yet often to show their devilish malice, they, when some have been got to wound their conscience but by denying the truth, have most cruelly butchered them and gloried them in it as a full revenge to destroy soul and body together. Again, truth is free and makes the soul free that cleaves to it. John chapter 8, verse 32. The truth shall make you free. Christ tells the Jews of a bondage they were in, which that brag people never dreamed on, verse 44. Ye are of your father the devil, and his lust you will do. Such slaves are all sinners. They must do what the devil will have them, and dare no more displease him than a child his father with a rod in his hand. Some witches have confessed that they had been forced to send out their imps to do mischief to others, that they might have cased themselves. For till they did send them abroad upon such errand, they were themselves tormented by them. And he who hath a lust sucking on him finds as little rest, if he be not always serving of it and making provision for it. Can the world, think you, show such another slave as this poor wretch is? Well, though all the bolts that the devil hath, lust I mean, were locked upon one sinner, and he shut up in the closet dungeon of all his prison, yet but this poor slave begin to be acquainted with the truth of Christ, so as to open his heart to it and close with it, you shall soon hear that the foundations of the prison were shaken, its doors thrown open, and the chains fallen off the poor creature's legs. Truth cannot itself be bound, nor will it dwell in the soul that lies bound in sin's prison. And therefore, when once truth and the soul are agreed, or rather Christ and the soul, who are brought together by truth, then the poor creature may lift up his head with joy, for his redemption and jail delivery from his spiritual bondage draws nigh. Yea, the day is come, the key is in the lock, already to let him out. It is impossible we should be acquainted with truth as it is in Jesus and be more strangers to this liberty that attends it. Ephesians 4:19-21. In a word, lastly, truth is victorious. It is great and shall prevail at last. It is the great counsel of God, and though Many fine plots and devices are found in the hearts of men, which show what they would do, yet the counsel of the Lord shall stand. All their eggs are addle when they have sat longest on them. Alas, they want power to hatch what their malice sits brooding on. Sometimes I confess the enemy to truth gets the militia of this lower world into their hands, and then truth seems to go to the ground, and those that witness to it are even slain. Yet then it is more than their persecutors can do to get them laid underground in their grave, Revelations 11:9. Some that were never thought on shall strike in on truth's side and forbid the burial. Persecutors need not be at cost for marble to write the memorial of their victories in. Dust will serve well enough, for they are not like to last so long. 3 days and a half the witnesses may lay dead in the streets, and truth sit disconsolate by them. But within a while they are walking in truth, triumphing again. If persecutors could kill their successors, then their work might be thought to stand strong, needing not to fear another to pull down what they have set up, and yet then their work would lie as open to heaven and might be as easily hindered as theirs at Babel. Who loves not to be on the winning side? Choose truth for thy side, and thou hast it. News may come that truth is sick, but never that it is dead. No, it is error is short-lived. A lying tongue is but for a moment, but truth's age runs parallel with God's eternity. It shall live to see their heads laid to the dust and to walk over their graves, but that were so busy to make one for her. Live, did I say? Yes. Reign in peace with those who now are willing to suffer with and for it. And wouldest thou not, Christian, be one amongst the goodly train of victors who shall attend on Christ's triumphant chariot into the heavenly city, there to take the crown and sit down in thy throne with those that have kept the field, when Christ and his truth are militant here on earth. Thus wouldest thou but in thy thoughts wipe away tears and blood, which now cover the face of suffering truth, and present it to thy eye as it should look in glory. Thou couldest not but cleave to it with a love stronger than death. But secondly, if yet there remains any qualm of fear on thy heart from the wrath of bloody men threatening thee for thy profession of the truth, then to a heart inflamed with the love of truth labor to add a heart filled with the fear of that wrath, which God hath in store for all that apostatize from the truth. When you chance to burn your finger, you hold it to the fire, which being a greater fire draws out the other. Thus when thy thoughts are scorched and thy heart scarred with the fire of man's wrath, hold them a while to hellfire, which God hath prepared for the fearful. Revelations 21:8, and all that run away from truth's colors. Hebrews 10:39, and thou wilt lose the sense of the one for the fear of the other. Pardon me, O Emperor, if I obey not thy command. Thou threatenest a prison, but God a hell. Observable is that of David, Psalms 119, verse 161. Princes have persecuted me without a cause, but my heart standeth in awe of thy word. He hath no cause to fear them that hath no cause to persecute him. One threatening out of the word that sets the point of God's wrath into his heart scars him more than the worst and the greatest on earth can do to him. Man's wrath, alas, when hottest, is but the temperate climate to the wrath of the living God. They who have felt both have testified as much. Man's wrath cannot hinder the access of God's love to the creature, which hath made the saints sing in the fire in spite of their enemies' teeth. But the creature under God's wrath is like one shut up in a closed oven, no crevice open to let any of the heat out or any refreshing into him. End of chapter 5, having been read by Peter John Parisi. None of my audios are copyrighted. Please feel free to make as many copies as you like to the glory of God.